Welcome, Chosen X. You step out of habitual noise into a corridor where light behaves like a patient teacher. The air tastes of old promises and the residue of agreements made when you had not yet learned to guard your pulse. Behind you, familiar voices offered gentle instruction that kept your edges blunt. Ahead, silence does not beg you to be smaller. It invites you to remember a cadence that predated adaptation. Liberation will feel less like uprooting and more like a careful return. Begin by noting how faces assumed roles that warped what was true. Some mirrors bent your reflection until intent blurred. Others masked need as closeness. This is reconnaissance, not accusation. Trace where attention thins, where laughter becomes duty, where consolation extracts your steadiness. These outlines will form your map, not a list of foes but a chart of thresholds and safe harbors. Think of people as weather. Some arrive as sudden storms that leave you raw. Others sit like persistent damp that adds weight you did not notice until movement becomes labor. Certain presences read like books you have outgrown, their margins no longer match yours. Releasing them is a translation, a way to reclaim your native rhythm. Practice an economy of energy. Measure what remains after each exchange. Do conversations enliven your field or muddy it? Do commitments hold when pressure comes? Integrity shows up as steadiness even in absence. Deceit acts like fog, making direction uncertain. Presence that drains is not challenging. One consumes to survive. The other asks you to grow. Discernment will become a simple ritual, like tending a small fire. Light it, tend it, watch what warmth returns. Some companions feed flame without demanding your bones. Others ignite chaos to prove a point. Balancing hospitality and preservation becomes skillful work. In quiet hours, grief will arrive. People are not failures for being unfinished. They carry histories that may make them unsuitable collaborators in your chapter. That sorrow is real, let it move through you. Grief is currency for rearrangement. As connections thin, sound condenses and clarity increases. Old dialogues loosen their hold and subtler frequencies emerge, the hush between notes, the breath that steadies a phrase, the insistence of your own point of view. Space becomes fertile when honored. In this interval, adopt small, precise practices. A single minute of steady attention before a mirror can be a practice. Walking without purpose to listen to your feet can be a practice. Words become vows when spoken with an attention that resists dilution. Boundaries are grammar for belonging, they clarify how you give and receive. When you set them, you trace the contours of a life aligned with your inner geometry. Learn to decline with tenderness, to withdraw without sharpness, to refuse without apology. Your refusal is not the exile of others but the alignment of life toward coherence. Solitude will not be punishment. It will be the studio where your voice is tuned. In quietness, the small tolerations you once harbored will sound wrong. You will see that many who claimed hours did so out of habit more than devotion. Honoring yourself means answering only calls that meet you where you actually are. Along the path, tests will come as obligations dressed in sorrow. Someone may call for rescue with tragic urgency. Another may layer guilt over a harmless decision until the soul bends. Notice the architecture of demands. Who profits from your labor of care? If imbalance appears, rebalance in subtle public ways that are private acts of fidelity to your sender. Tenderness can coexist with resolute refusal. You will offer compassion within limits that do not hollow you. Every step toward clarity will refine your language. Words will return to being tools that create rather than conceal. By the time the corridor opens into morning, you will know the difference between a company that sustains and a company that siphons. Carry that knowledge as a lamp, not a weapon. Choose people who amplify steady notes in your song, who return resonance without distortion. Doing so does not close the world. It clears the lens through which your life is seen, making room for allies who sing in key with the life you intend. Allow silence to teach you patience and curiosity. In the days ahead, you will test this practice by refusing ragged bargains and by keeping your word to yourself. New faces will arrive, some brief and bright like summer constellations, others slow and steadfast like river stones. You will be drawn to those whose presence preserves your tempo, and you will find that reciprocity is a quiet oath kept across ordinary tasks. Keep the lamp between your hands. Let it guide small decisions and large ones. In time, your company will be chosen not from scarcity but from a measured abundance that honors the depth of your attention. Step with the lamp, choosing those who mirror your care and the clarity that steadies your voice each dawn. You enter the gallery where light and reflection conspire to teach you how to choose. Each pane presents a version of companionship that asks for different currency. Some demand your rescue, claiming emergency as a way to inhabit your schedule. Others arrive with an appetite for attention that never satisfies and leaves you thinner than before. The room has a rhythm you will learn to read. Listen for the tempo that drains you and the pitches that refill your spirit. First, observe those who cannot commit. Their loyalty is seasonal. They show up for celebration and contract at the first sign of discomfort. You measure them by their return, not by their words. When absence becomes a pattern, you will stop rearranging your life to fit their calendar. Consistency becomes your new faith. Near them, a reflection holds the shape of constant conflict. This person wages an ongoing war within themselves and invites you into the skirmish. Their energy is weather that erodes tolerance. You practice being present without recruitment. Offer brief shelter but decline permanent stationing in their chaos. Your care can be fierce and boundaried at once. Elsewhere, a mirror reveals someone who falsifies light. They speak of values while trading them for convenience. Their promises collect like dust and fail when tested. You will learn to value alignment more than rhetoric. Ask for evidence of devotion. Actions that match speech are the currency of trust. You will also meet the chronic deceiver. They minimize truth using soft phrases and clever detours. With them you will grow a new muscle, the habit of verification without bitterness. Questions become instruments that restore clarity. Do not let courtesy permit obfuscation. Another glass shows the person who lacks love for themselves. Their yearning becomes a request that never yields. They seek affirmation as a substitute for inner work. When their insecurity tries to anchor your days, you will refuse to be the sole supplier of their worth. Offer reflection but do not be consumed by the task of filling an unfertilized heart. Some reflections are manipulators who teach you to negotiate with guilt. They frame needs as debts and use language that bends responsibility toward you. Your response is to reclaim a voice with precise boundaries. Name what you will accept and what you will not. You do not owe explanation to every attempt to make you feel culpable. There are the energy drainers who mirror your optimism only to leech it away. Conversations with them leave you diminished, as if a glass you had previously full now sits emptier. Measure exchange by what returns to you. Reciprocity is not always equal, but it is not only one-sided. Seek reciprocity as a habit, not as a favor you must coax from generosity. You will find those who betray themselves. They present an outer posture while their interior narrative contradicts it. Such people erode trust because their inconsistency becomes contagious. In their presence you will practice small acts of fidelity to yourself, saying yes to things you can keep and declining when promises stretch thin. Finally, some mirrors reflect skepticism that numbs possibility. These naysayers tighten your chest with doubt and ask you to prove hope before you are allowed to hold it. Surrounding yourself with relentless caution will calcify aspiration. Balance critique with encouragement and choose companions who craft possibility into doable steps. In the center of the room you stand with a lantern, not to scorch the glass but to reveal what is already true. Naming becomes your labor. You name the exhaustion, the irritation, the pattern, and you name the boundary that resolves the tension. Each naming is a small vow, a careful architecture of self-protection. You will practice saying no without drama and yes without apology. As you move among reflections, remember sorrow for what cannot be changed and gratitude for the lessons each image offers. Your task is not to erase every mirror but to choose which panes receive your attention. You will stop fixing reflections and start refining how you respond to them. What once felt like endless obligation will become a map you consult with calmness. Leaving the gallery is a procession of small decisions, declining invitations that misalign with your rhythm, answering calls with clarity rather than haste, keeping company with people who amplify steadiness. The fracture you encounter is not defeat. It is an invitation to translation. You will carry a new lexicon of relationship that honors both mercy and discernment. When at last you step outside, you sense that the world has not transformed so much as your view of it has. The mirrors remain, but they no longer script your day. Instead, they exist as data, useful and bounded. You carry the lamp forward, choosing companions whose timbre resonates with the song you intend to sing. The chamber taught you how to prefer your own frequency and how to invite others again. You enter a room that is all hush and measured breath, a place where echoes become teachers and the absence of conversation reveals a curriculum. Here the world narrows to the rhythm of your pulse and the unattended corners of memory begin to name themselves. You discover that quiet is not merely empty space but a field where dormant truths take root. In the early hours you feel old attachments settle behind your sternum like a weathered stone. That pressure is honest, it announces a change. Begin by listening to small sounds. The scratch of a pen, the distant movement of a train, the whisper of your garment. Each noise is punctuation in your internal narrative, an honest counterpoint to the loud demands that once directed your attention. Learn to attend without answering every call. Cultivate patience that resembles a gardener at dusk, willing to wait for soil to soften before sowing. Restraint becomes devotion that protects creative energy from depletion. As days accumulate this way, you undergo a subtle reconfiguration. Habits that once felt like customs appear as relics installed for other people. You notice gestures offered that were never returned, rituals performed to keep someone else comfortable at the cost of your center. Those patterns are not your identity but inherited choreography. Unlearning them requires a method. Chart small transactions and observe how your vitality shifts in response. Where generosity becomes erasure, reserve practice becomes a shield. Solitude shows practical faces. Some mornings you awaken with clear intent and the ease of flowing around tasks. Other nights hardness returns, and you sit with unanswered questions like a small crowd. Allow both conditions to exist. There is no hurry to reconcile every fragment. Paradox teaches fidelity more sharply than tidy resolution. Tolerate incompletion as an honest companion, not a deficiency. Symbols begin to appear in ordinary objects. A chipped cup becomes a map of persistence. A single moth trapped against a window glows as a reminder that fragile things navigate toward light even when barriers exist. Notice these metaphors without needing to decode them instantly. They are allegories working at a subterranean level to shift inclination. Let them sit beside daily chores as quiet instruction. You will be tempted to fill intervals with explanations, to narrate yourself into coherence for someone else. Resist this impulse. Clarity earned through external validation is brittle. Instead, allow language to condense into gestures of care you can keep. A brief note left for yourself, a promise to sleep earlier, a refusal spoken with calm courtesy. These small acts build a grammar of integrity. Practice them until they become unremarkable. Compassion remains central but changes form. It is no longer a currency you spend to purchase acceptance. It becomes a care you reserve for both others and the vessel that carries your attention. When a neighbor arrives laden with complaints, you can offer presence without accepting a permanent lodger. When a friend asks for constant reassurance, you can reply with truth that strengthens rather than sustains dependency. As hush deepens, your sense of time transforms. Moments stretch into broader arcs and choices reveal themselves with generous clarity. You will begin to notice the company you keep by how mornings feel. Some relationships produce lightness that allows planning and rest between tasks. Others create heaviness that demands constant repair. Use these sensations as practical guidance rather than moral judgments. Reintegration appears slowly. With renewed boundaries, you begin to re-engage the world with a softer, steadier hand. Conversations become exchanges of mutual fuel rather than unilateral output. Work regains texture and play returns to gestures that had been rationed. You are no longer erasing parts of yourself to accommodate a script that never fits. This phase will test your willingness to honor small disciplines. The cumulative effect of tiny faithful acts yields a serenity that is not silence alone but attuned vibrancy. When people return or when new alliances emerge, you will know them by how they sustain ordinary momentum and respect the intervals between bursts of intensity. Close this chapter of solitude with 2 practical promises: to answer invitations in ways that conserve attention and to offer presence without sacrifice of center. These accords are living vows that fertilize creative endurance. Move forward with them and you will find inner architecture strengthened. The weight you once felt will graduate into ballast that steadies rather than drags. Keep walking with measured breath and the hand you extend will find worthy palms to receive it. Let curiosity be your compass as you test gentle reunions and offer forgiveness that keeps firm edges. Soon your conversations will shift, matching the deliberate cadence you now carry. New alliances will come with steady hands. You rise into a space where light is not merely visible but accountable, where illumination feels like a ledger that balances what you give with what returns. In this chapter you learn that ascension does not cancel responsibility. Instead it refines it, shaping your choices into acts that hold consequence and compassion simultaneously. You are asked to become steady enough to carry radiance without fracturing, to hold influence with humility so that service does not become vanity. Start by tending to ordinary rituals as sacred work. The way you prepare a meal, the steadiness of your breath before a call, the ritual of closing a door behind you, these unremarked acts accumulate as the architecture of presence. Practice fidelity to small promises and notice that integrity glows outward. When your days align with these quiet commitments, others sense not only your resolve but the safety of your field. People will arrive to test the new you. Some will celebrate in genuine joy. Others will approach with old habits expecting familiar accommodations. Meet both with clarity. Gratitude greets sincere offerings. Firmness greets requests that presume your endless availability. You will learn to say yes in ways that nurture and no in ways that preserve. Saying no will become a form of art, precise and gentle, sealing the edges of your life so that what remains can deepen without distraction. You will also steward influence. With increased clarity comes requests for guidance and for participation in the journeys of others. Respond with discernment. Offer tools that expand capacity rather than foster dependence. Teach how to hold a practice rather than hold someone through every lapse. Your role is not to fix what others must repair for themselves but to point toward methods that enable self-repair. At times you will face moral friction. Not every test resolves into comfortable answers. You will be asked to weigh compassion against consequence, to recognize when tenderness enables harm and when firmness shields growth. Draw on subtle metrics. Does this action encourage autonomy or maintain reliance? Will this intervention cultivate resilience or prolong fragility? Let such questions guide your response more than impulse or guilt. Community begins to form around reciprocity and shared discipline. The people who remain will likely be those who show up in the daily work of life, not merely in bright moments. They are present in meals, in small repairs, in the long patience of ordinary tasks. These companions may not always match your sensitivity to spirit, but they keep promises and bring steadiness. Value steadiness as spiritual material. There will be moments when you must release leaders who carry charisma without alignment. Charm can be intoxicating and will test your capacity to see beyond performance. Elevate authenticity over spectacle. Prefer people whose habits match their words and whose presence creates easier breathing rather than tightness. When you let go of charismatic misalignment, you make space for voices that sustain long-term growth. Creativity will expand as a result of this clearing. Freed attention makes room for deeper inquiry and for the practice of craft. Your work will take on texture and patience will return to production. You will discover layers of expression that were previously muted by distraction. Allow projects to mature through slow tending rather than frantic completion. The long unfolding will yield work that holds both beauty and utility. Remember to regard power as a service rather than a prize. Influence is not a marker of worth but an instrument to be wielded carefully. When you are invited into positions that require stewardship, ask how your choices will affect others over many seasons. Consider the unseen consequences and choose with humility. In the quiet that follows hard decisions, you will taste a steadier clarity. Your energy will thicken into a calm presence that others notice without demands. Use this presence to foster spaces where introspection and generosity coexist. Keep teaching by example. Show how tethered compassion can be and how protective boundaries feed courage. As this part closes, know that emerging into light is not arrival but a new form of practice. Each day will provide renewed opportunities to refine fidelity, to choose influence responsibly, and to cultivate a community that mirrors your steadiness. Walk forward with hands open and feet planted, making room for those who match your pace and for the labors that will shape your craft and your care. As seasons of attention fold into one another, a distant glow will begin to trace the horizon of your life. It will not demand, it will invite. In that invitation you will recognize an unfolding that asks for witness more than action, and in that witness the next chapter waits to be heard. Step toward that light with gentle awe, allowing its outline to teach you the contours of what remains to be tended. You arrive at a season where duty and tenderness keep equal watch, where promises are small, exact, and honored. After pruning habits that once scattered your attention, you hold a new measure for how care can be given without dissolution. Presence becomes the work, not performance of virtue. You choose tasks that require steady hands and release gestures that only pretend to help while emptying your reservoir. Choices now pass through a slow sieve. Invitations asking for rescue or rehearsed devotion fall away. You learn to read tempo, whether a voice steadies or pulls, whether a request returns nourishment or extracts it. This discernment is refinement, a devotion sharpened into craft. Reciprocity matters more than rhetoric, actions matter more than vows. Those who remain are ordinary with uncommon fidelity. They show up to fix small things, to share mundane meals, to fold your laundry with attention. Their constancy builds trust over seasons. Influence becomes responsibility. You carry it gently and test how decisions affect lives across years rather than moments. Power is practiced as stewardship, not trophy. Forgiveness gains structure. Harm is named, repair is requested, boundaries are re-established. Mercy does not mean resetting patterns that harm you, it means allowing repair when it is offered and declining the spectacle of perpetual apology. This architecture keeps memory but prevents perpetual bleeding. You no longer narrate pain into permanence, instead you translate lessons into practices that guard future space. Practice deepens. Projects that once failed for lack of attention are tended with patience. You favor finishing rather than beginning anew. The slow accumulation of faithful acts yields work that breathes and endures. Creativity becomes a rhythm of return, and craft is measured in how long something survives your steadiness. Alliances form around shared routines rather than dramatic encounters. These companions may not be notably brilliant, but their reliability feels like infrastructure. They keep promises in ordinary weather. They answer texts when asked, show up when sick, and hold silence without claiming it. Value reliability as spiritual fabric. Then the field offers a signal. At the center of your view, a glow lifts out of the surrounding calm and a frame emerges. It contains a recorded session that continues the training you have begun. The material is practical, guided practices, demonstrations of method, and stories of small bravery. Watching is not spectacle, it is practice. The frame invites you to learn hands by doing, to slow with each instruction, to fold exercises into daily habit. If you accept this invitation, receive it as a commitment to return. Engage the visual offering like a class at dawn, pause where necessary, repeat brief exercises across days, document subtle changes. Treat this content as laboratory work. Bring a notebook. Test methods for a week and note shifts. Share small results with trusted peers as evidence rather than performance. To make return easier, consider subscribing and enabling notifications. Let subscription be a domestic agreement with yourself, a vow to check back and maintain continuity. Enabling notifications simply rings when a new practice arrives, helping guidance find attention that is ready. Think of these clicks as practical tools that support steady return, not as commerce. Engagement matters more than passive viewing. Comment with what you try, post brief notes about experiments, and respond to others with concise reports of practice. A community built from disciplined labor will be modest but rich in fidelity. People who gather through practice will offer tools, patience, and small daily repairs rather than slogans. Take one full breath and place a hand where resolve feels strongest. Offer gratitude to quiet teachers seen and unseen. When you are ready, let your gaze move to the light at the center screen. Press play as a formal step toward continuation. If you subscribe, let that click be a promise to yourself. If you enable notifications, let that sound be a reminder that steady work arrives in small, repeated steps. The recorded segment waits not as escape but as practice. Embrace it with the same calm rigor you have cultivated here. Walk toward the work with patience, curiosity, and the resolve to do the small tasks that accumulate into lasting change. Begin each session with a small right, lower lights, clear a surface, set a timer for focused practice, breathe 3 full breaths, and place a note to record one observation afterward. Honor short stretches of disciplined attention rather than marathon efforts. Over months, gentle repetition builds a strong scaffolding for change. Notice not striking revelations but subtle returns of ease, clearer priorities, and decisions that preserve vitality. Continue, measure, and carry results into ordinary days. Share that work with a single trusted peer and compare small data points weekly to sustain momentum.